People don't respect you because to them you are replaceable. That's the first cut you must accept. You walk through life thinking decency earns respect, that politeness, kindness, and fairness will make others treat you with dignity. But human beings don't work like that. Nietzsche once wrote that morality is often just the mask of the weak, a system invented by those without power to restrain those who have it. Respect functions the same way. It is not freely given. It is not guaranteed by your good character. It is extracted like tax from others through the pressure of your presence. Why don't people respect you? Because you've been trained to think of respect as a right. Society whispers that everyone deserves it. But look closely. The people you admire, the people who command rooms, they don't sit around asking for respect. They demand it, consciously or unconsciously, by how they exist. Freud described human beings as driven by unconscious forces, desires, fears, instincts that rarely align with polite social scripts. Respect is not decided rationally. It emerges from how others feel in your presence, threatened, awed, intrigued, or dismissed. And most people leave others feeling nothing at all. When you enter a room, people scan you in seconds. They calculate your status, your posture, your voice, your willingness to set boundaries. Jung believed that people project archetypes onto others, the hero, the tyrant, the victim. If you fail to embody an archetype, they won't know what to do with you, and so they push you to the margins. You become invisible. And nothing is more humiliating than invisibility. So here's the reality. Respect is not given to the nice, the quiet, or the endlessly accommodating. It is given to those who radiate a subtle threat that losing their approval or presence would cost you something. People respect fire, not lukewarm water. They respect those who, by their very being, force others to take them seriously. Respect is not something you wait for. It is something you seize, something you force, by shaping yourself into someone who cannot be ignored. Disrespect is not random. It follows a precise anatomy, like a predator sensing weakness in prey. Think of how children test authority. They don't ask whether their parent is kind or generous or a good person. They test limits. And if limits collapse, respect collapses with them. Adults aren't any different. Every time someone interrupts you, ignores your words, mocks your ideas, or dismisses your presence, it's not because they don't understand you. It's because in their primal calculations, they know they can get away with it. Adler, the psychologist who rebelled against Freud, said that at the core of every human interaction is a struggle for superiority. This doesn't mean everyone wants to dominate in a violent sense, but rather that people are constantly arranging themselves into hierarchies. Some higher, some lower. And disrespect happens when others unconsciously relegate you to the bottom. They may not even think about it consciously, but their body language, tone, and behavior reveal it. Disrespect is always a verdict. It's a declaration. You do not matter enough to fear. But here's the sinister twist. Disrespect is addictive. The more people get away with disrespecting you, the more they reinforce it among themselves. Your role solidifies. You become the safe punching bag, the background character, the one no one has to weigh before speaking. And that becomes your identity, not just to them, but to yourself. You start carrying yourself like a disrespected person. Your shoulders slump, your voice hesitates. You stop expecting deference, and so no one even thinks to give it. Philosophers like Foucault taught that power is everywhere, not just in governments and institutions, but in everyday interactions. The microphysics of power are playing out in every glance, every silence, every interruption. Respect and disrespect are the invisible currencies of this economy. The one who controls these exchanges, who sets the tone, who silences others, who frames the narrative, becomes the unspoken authority. And the one who tolerates disrespect becomes nothing more than a prop. So understand this. Disrespect isn't an accident. It's a signal, a measurement of where you stand in the hierarchy of human interactions. And until you confront this reality, you'll keep bleeding respect without even knowing it. Here's the paradox that most people never escape. They confuse being liked with being respected. But liking is cheap. People like clowns. They like entertainers. They like pets. Liking does not require fear, authority, or consequence. Respect, however, is born from tension, an unspoken recognition that you are not to be trifled with. That crossing you has a cost. that ignoring you would mean missing something essential. Plato warned of this confusion long ago. In his dialogues, he criticized those who sought flattery from the masses instead of truth. To be liked is to serve others' appetites. To be respected is to shape them, and shaping them requires friction. The one who is universally liked is, by necessity, harmless. They offend no one, contradict nothing, and bend to every wind. That is not respect, it's decoration. Think of how leaders, revolutionaries, and thinkers were treated in their lifetimes. Nietzsche was despised, Socrates was executed, Christ was crucified. They were not liked, they were respected, sometimes in fear, sometimes in awe, sometimes in hatred. But the core is the same. They disrupted the flow of life so violently that people could not ignore them. They bent reality around themselves. In psychology, we call this dominance signaling. It's not always about brute force. It can be intellectual dominance, moral dominance, creative dominance, but it must signal power. Jung would argue that the archetype here is the warrior or the king, figures who impose their presence by embodying order, strength, and unyielding boundaries. And when you embody that, something remarkable happens. People may not like you, but they will respect you because they must. If you want to be respected, you must abandon the pathetic need to be universally liked. Respect requires polarity. It requires that some people bristle in your presence, that others feel unsettled, that many admire you reluctantly because denying your presence would feel dishonest. Liking soothes the ego. Respect shakes the soul. One is comfort, the other is power. Respect is not earned over decades of quiet labor. It is forced in moments of decisive self-assertion. Think of it as psychological violence, not physical but symbolic. You draw a line, you enforce it. And in that instant, others learn what you will and will not tolerate. Respect emerges from boundaries, not bargains. The average person makes the fatal mistake of negotiating respect. They think, if I'm patient, if I explain myself, if I show my worth, eventually they'll treat me right. Wrong. Every second you negotiate, you broadcast weakness. You're telling the world my worth is up for debate. And predators, whether in the boardroom or the family dinner table, never respect prey that asks politely not to be eaten. Foucault insisted that power is not a thing you possess. It's a relationship, a dynamic constantly renegotiated in every interaction. If you allow others to speak over you, dismiss you, or treat you as lesser, you've already ceded the battlefield. But if you cut through interruption with silence that freezes the room, or with words that slice directly to the point, you shift the balance instantly. The mechanics are simple. People respect what interrupts their inertia. In behavioral psychology, this is called operant conditioning. Every time you enforce a boundary, by refusing an insult, rejecting manipulation, or demanding recognition, you condition others to treat you differently. Humans are animals of habit. Once they learn that violating you has consequences, social discomfort, confrontation, or loss of your presence, they adapt. Respect is the habit you drill into others by repetition, not the gift they hand you out of goodwill. Nietzsche framed it bluntly. The strong impose their values, the weak inherit them. Forcing respect means deciding that your values, your space, your voice will not be handed over cheaply. It means you become, in Jungian terms, the figure of the warrior, someone who does not seek conflict but radiates the potential for it. A presence that warns silently, cross this line and pay the price. That is how respect begins, not with endless effort, but with one act of uncompromising defiance. The moment you stop asking for it and start demanding it with your existence. Respect is rarely spoken. It is transmitted in silence, in posture, in the 1,000 micro-gestures that reveal who you are without uttering a word. Before you say anything, your body has already announced your place in the hierarchy. And most people, tragically, are screaming inferior without knowing it. Look at the way you enter a room. Do your eyes dart nervously? Do you fold your shoulders, shrink yourself, signal that you hope not to be noticed? That is the body language of prey. Humans read these signals unconsciously, the same way wolves sense weakness in a herd. Your words may later be strong, but the verdict is already passed. You're not a threat. You're safe to dismiss. Jung spoke of the shadow, the part of the self we repress because it terrifies us. The shadow holds aggression, dominance, and raw energy. When suppressed, you become palatable, but you also become powerless. People sense the absence of your shadow. They sense you won't fight, won't risk, won't bleed for your voice. And that absence kills respect. Conversely, when someone embodies their shadow, when they carry themselves as though they are capable of saying no, of walking away, of unleashing controlled aggression if provoked, the air shifts. No words are necessary. The voice deepens slightly. The gaze holds longer. The pauses between words become heavier. These are signals of dominance. Not arrogance, not theatrical posturing, but a calm readiness that unsettles others because it feels dangerous. This is why some people command respect just by standing in silence, while others can scream their lungs out and still be ignored. Respect is not in the volume of your voice, it is in the weight of your presence. Sartre said existence precedes essence. Who you are is decided by how you act. In respect, it's decided by how you stand, how you breathe, how you stare. If you want respect, master silence before speech, master posture before argument, master gaze before words. These primal signals bypass intellect and strike directly into instinct. And instinct, not reason, is where respect lives. From childhood you've been fed a lie, that humility is virtue, that obedience earns admiration, that blending in keeps you safe. Schools reward quiet compliance. Workplaces praise team players who never rattle cages. Families shame children who speak too boldly. And over time, this lie sinks into your bones. You start to believe that respect comes from being agreeable, soft-spoken, inoffensive. But history proves the opposite. The people who reshape culture, who lead movements, who command reverence, they are never the ones who blend. They are the ones who rupture. Nietzsche warned us against the herd morality, the code of the masses designed to neuter the individual. Herd morality says, don't stand too tall, don't speak too loud, don't offend anyone. Why? Because the herd cannot tolerate strength. It feels threatened by the individual who refuses to kneel. Foucault would argue this conditioning is intentional. Institutions teach obedience not because it builds respect, but because it makes populations easier to control. The more you swallow your instincts, the more predictable you become. And predictability is death to respect. No one respects what they can predict completely. Respect requires uncertainty. It requires that others look at you and think, I don't fully know what this person is capable of. Even psychology backs this up. Maslow's hierarchy places self-actualization at the top, but most people never rise beyond belonging and esteem. They sacrifice individuality for acceptance. They seek safety in conformity and then wonder why no one respects them. Respect and conformity are incompatible. To be respected, you must first be willing to be disliked, even hated. Here's the bitter truth. Society would rather you be nice than respected. Nice people can be controlled. Nice people work hard and get passed over. Nice people are remembered only for how cooperative they were. But respected people, they bend society around themselves. They are difficult, abrasive, unpredictable. They trigger envy and fear, and that is exactly why they cannot be ignored. Break this conditioning, and you instantly separate yourself from the herd. Stop apologizing for existing. Stop lowering your voice to make others comfortable. Stop mistaking obedience for dignity. Respect begins where compliance ends. Respect does not grow in comfort. It is born in confrontation, in conflict, in the willingness to endure pain without breaking. Look at the figures history reveres, not because they lived easy lives, but because they carried their suffering like a weapon. The scars on their character became proof of resilience, and resilience is the essence of respect. Jung said that the greatest burden a man can bear is his own potential. That potential is tested only through trials. If you avoid conflict, if you flee from confrontation, you remain untested, untempered. People may pity you, but they will never respect you. Pity is the counterfeit coin of respect. It feels like recognition, but in reality, it reduces you to weakness. Respect comes when others know you can endure what they cannot. Think of the soldier who returns from war, the activist who survives prison, the artist who starves for decades yet refuses to quit. Their suffering makes their presence heavy, undeniable. You cannot dismiss them, because their existence has been validated by the crucible of hardship. Freud understood this through his concept of sublimation, the transformation of pain, rage, or desire into something higher. Pain endured and transmuted becomes power. But most people today worship comfort. They anesthetize themselves with entertainment, with distractions, with endless escapes from difficulty, and then they wonder why no one takes them seriously. How could they? What weight do you carry if you have never been willing to bleed for your stance? Respect requires proof. Not certificates, not titles, but scars. Nietzsche's will to power was not about crushing others, but about the inner conquest, taking your pain and shaping it into strength. To force respect, you must stop avoiding suffering. Seek it. Enter difficult conversations. Confront disrespect directly. Walk into spaces where you are underestimated and refuse to bow. Every confrontation you survive, every insult you refuse to absorb, every injustice you fight, becomes another layer of armor. Respect is never given to those who hide from fire. It is reserved for those who walk through flames and emerge still standing, still unbroken, with eyes that say, "I will not collapse, no matter what you throw at me." That is the aura others cannot ignore. Winning respect can happen in a moment. Holding it requires a lifetime of vigilance. The world is filled with men and women who rose once, demanded respect once, and then collapsed into irrelevance because they could not sustain the weight of their own presence. Respect is not a medal you hang on the wall. It is a currency that must be defended every day. Foucault taught that power is fluid. It shifts constantly, minute by minute, conversation by conversation. The moment you relax, the moment you stop enforcing boundaries, people begin testing again. They poke, they prod, they search for weakness, and if they find it, the respect you forced evaporates. Humans respect consistency. They respect those who remain unshaken, whose standards do not bend with the weather. This is why ancient kings built rituals, why warriors carried symbols, why philosophers repeated maxims. They were not just reminders to others, but to themselves. Nietzsche called this eternal recurrence. The idea that strength is proven not once, but endlessly, in every cycle of existence. The moment you rest on yesterday's respect, you've already lost today's. In psychology, this is reinforcement. Just as a child tests limits again and again, so too do adults. And if you falter even once, if you laugh at the insult, if you excuse the slight, if you let someone cross the line without consequence, you reset the conditioning. You show that your power was situational, not structural, that your respect was fragile. And fragile respect is no respect at all. To hold respect, you must become a fortress, not rigid and brittle, but unyielding in essence. A fortress adapts to siege, repairs its walls and signals with every stone, "I am not temporary." This does not mean paranoia or aggression. It means living with the quiet awareness that every moment is a test, that how you carry yourself today decides how you'll be treated tomorrow. Respect is not a climax, it is a discipline. It demands daily proof. The gaze held steady, the silence unbroken, the boundary enforced without apology. To force respect once is power. To hold it every day is sovereignty. Here is the radical truth. Forcing respect has nothing to do with others. It begins and ends with you. Every insult tolerated, every slight ignored, every moment of invisibility, you allowed it because you disrespected yourself first. The world mirrors back the value you secretly place on your own existence. If you see yourself as expendable, others will treat you as expendable. If you carry yourself as inevitable, others will treat you as inevitable. Sartre claimed that man is condemned to be free, that we alone must create meaning in a meaningless world. Respect is part of that creation. No God, no society, no family can give it to you. You must give it to yourself first. When you refuse to betray your own standards, when you choose integrity over approval, when you stand alone rather than kneel with the herd, you become untouchable. Others sense it. They may not love you. They may envy you, hate you, even fear you. But they will respect you because self-respect radiates outward like a law of nature. Psychology confirms this. Cognitive dissonance theory tells us people align their beliefs with their actions. If you act as if you deserve respect, by enforcing boundaries, carrying yourself with weight, refusing humiliation, others' minds bend to match your actions. They rationalize, this person must matter. Respect is not begged into existence. It is forced by the consistency of your own self-image made visible in the world. Nietzsche's Übermensch was not a tyrant ruling others. It was the individual ruling himself, unchained from herd morality, living by his own law. Respect flows naturally from such a figure, because people cannot help but bow, if not in admiration, then in reluctant acknowledgement. that here stands someone who cannot be broken. So understand this. The final battlefield is not your boss, your peers, your enemies, or strangers. It is the war between the self you are and the self you're afraid to become. Win that war, and respect is inevitable. Lose it, and no amount of approval from others will ever fill the void. Respect is not given, it is not earned, it is not even taken. Respect is created from within, and then forced upon the world as an undeniable reality. Here is the conclusion no one wants to hear. If people don't respect you, it's because you've allowed them not to. Every moment of hesitation, every swallowed word, every boundary crossed without resistance, those were permissions you gave away. And life, brutal as it is, does not forgive permissions. It compounds them until you are invisible. So the command is simple, but it will terrify you. Stop living as if respect is optional. Stop living as if respect is something that arrives by luck, by time, by hoping others will suddenly see your worth. Respect is not found, it is imposed. It is the iron law you write into every room you enter, every relationship you hold, every word you speak. Philosophers debated the meaning of existence, but all agreed on one truth. The human being is unfinished until it asserts itself. Nietzsche said, "Become who you are." Jung said, "Integrate your shadow." Sartre said, "You are nothing but the sum of your acts." They all converge on this point. Respect is self-creation made visible. You decide you are worthy, and then you live in such a way that others have no choice but to conform to that reality. This will cost you. You will lose the comfort of being liked by everyone. You will provoke envy, anger, hostility, but this is the price of sovereignty. The herd does not forgive the wolf who steps out of line, but neither can it ignore him. Respect is not about peace, it is about presence. It is about walking into the world and declaring, "I will not be overlooked, I will not be trivialized, I will not be erased." If you want respect, force it. Through your silence, through your boundaries, through your willingness to endure suffering, through your refusal to bend. Become the fortress, the flame, the figure who cannot be ignored. Because in the end, the world does not remember the agreeable, the polite, the endlessly compliant. It remembers those who demanded respect and took it without apology. That is your command. Force the world to bow or it will trample you.